We are living, I think we'd all agree, in very divided times where there's so many different things that we disagree about, the way we see the world, who we vote for, where we live, where we drive, how we work, how we parent our kids, right? But the one unifying thing is that we all think the person next to us this morning is on their phone too much. Right? We all think we're all on our devices way too much. You could actually say that our devices can actually be divisive between us. And we are so excited this morning to kick off a brand new series about technology, hopefully to hand all of us a theology, an understanding of God and technology. We live in incredible technological times, and we have these supercomputers that are in our pockets, the whole world in the palm of our hands all the time. There's some incredible technological advances we've had just over the last 5 to 10 years when you think about it. For me, one that I don't think a lot of people think about a lot is the cloud. And nobody understands the cloud, but there used to be a time when you'd be working on something on a computer that you actually had to save it, and you had to have a disk, a floppy disk or a jump drive or a hard drive that you put it on, and you would take that file with you to where you needed to deliver the file because the file was too big. Now, it automatically goes up into the cloud. It just saved up there. And I don't know who's running that cloud up there or anything like that. I don't understand it, but it's a pretty amazing technological advancement. I love music. Many of you guys love music. Growing up, I had massive trapper keepers of CDs. And if you don't know what a CD is, it's a really big iTunes. It's a really big Spotify thing. But I had big trapper keepers of these CDs. Now, because of YouTube or Apple Music or Spotify, I have every single song ever, on demand to my device that I can stream to a speaker, I can stream in my car. It's an incredible technological advance. You think about over the last 14 months or so as we've been walking together as a human race through the global pandemic of COVID-19, how incredible was FaceTime in those early months in quarantine, right? When we couldn't see family at all and we were just locked up in our homes, we could actually look on a device and see their faces, which was just a next level thing compared to just talking to them on the phone. It's an amazing time that we live in. And when you think about the gospel and the church and the message of Jesus, technology has been incredible for us. So many of you, your stories with Jesus or maybe your stories with Bridgeway began because you were stuck at home and you were scrolling on Facebook on Sunday morning and saw our janky little live stream we had of me putting 2 cardboard boxes and my phone on top of it, hoping it didn't fall as I was giving the message sitting at a stool, right? It was amazing that we could connect with so many people in those early months of quarantine. Also, there's just the Bible app and different kind of applications that we can have that the scriptures are now translated into every language, and we can actually index and we can search the Bible on our devices no matter where we are in any translation through any language. It's an incredible time that we live in with technology, and God uses technology in incredible ways. But can I just tell you a few things that drive me crazy about technology as well? As amazing as technology is, there's some things that are annoying about technology. I don't know about you, but I'm an iPhone user, so I'm a Jesus follower, and I'm just kidding. Team Green, you are welcome here. Maybe you're online too. You're welcome to be with us, Team Green, this morning. But anyway, when I'm on the phone and then somebody else calls me, I get this screen and I just break out into a cold sweat, right? Way too many choices. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Hold and accept, decline, end and accept, remind me, send them a message. I look down at it and I feel like I'm a fairly intelligent person. I have no idea what to do in this moment. So I just panic and close my phone, panic and hang up on everybody, right? Anybody have if you're an iPhone user or you have a smart speaker at home, but use Siri, the personal assistant that's in your pocket. Anybody use Siri to tell Siri to remind you to do things? Siri's pretty amazing. We have this smart speaker in our kitchen, and our 2-year-old Jack loves music, and so he's always wanting to play music. So we're like, hey Siri, play this song. It's usually some kind of nursery rhyme or a Beatles song because we're raising him in the way of Jesus again. But it's always terrible when you say, hey Siri, play this. It always happens with my wife, and it just plays this gangster rap song that you did not want it to play at all. What are you doing, Siri? So sometimes we get a little snippy with Siri, but this is what happens sometimes when you get snippy with Siri. Check this out. Siri, you need to do a better job of understanding me. Siri goes, noted. Look at the sarcasm in that, noted. Yeah, make a note of that is what we'd say back, and he said, here's your note of that. I'm telling you, the level of sarcasm in this thing, I'm uncomfortable with it. Another thing that's kind of crazy is, I don't know if you've ever been online trying to get into one of your accounts for something, and you get this thing called a CAPTCHA test that comes up. And it's basically a robot trying to make you prove to the robot that you're not a robot. And it gives you a test like this, which just, again, sends shivers down my spine. Select all the squares with traffic lights. It's just to prove that you're not a robot. And I always freak out because I'm like, well, that line is right there on the thing holding up the traffic light, but am I going to lose access to all my stuff if I don't get all of the traffic lights in there? Some robot going to tell me, no, you're actually a robot if we get it wrong, right? Drives me crazy. Am I alone in this? Isn't this kind of wild, right? Sorry, this is like the grinds my gears moment of the message this morning. But technology is amazing, but it can be very annoying. But here's another thing that technology is. It is impacting us as a culture, as the human race. We say it this way, that technology is not holy, technology is not evil, but technology is changing us. And our access to all the information of the world and our access to one another 24/7, it is changing me and it is changing you whether you realize it or not. So we think it's important for us to talk about it in church because here at Bridgeway, we believe that Jesus is inviting you, he's inviting me into the life that is truly life. And we don't want to be robbed at all. We don't want to have anything get in the way of this invitation, this gift that Jesus has for us. So we need to have a DTR this morning, a define the relationship talk when it comes to our devices, when it comes to this technology that we have in our hands all the time. You don't know what a DTR is? It's define the relationship. It's that talk that you have when you're dating. If you could think back of that, to be like, hey, are we serious? We exclusive? Is this really happening? You know, like you have that define the relationship. I think we need to have that define the relationship talk when it comes to our technology, because if we don't, we'll start walking down a path that we don't want to walk down, and we find ourselves in a place that we don't want to be when it comes to our technology and it comes to our devices. So this series, the next 3 weeks, it's about your relationship. It's about my relationship with our technology, with our devices. Let me say this again. It's about your relationship. It's not about who you're with this morning and their relationship. Let's not do like the church lady elbow thing to the person next to us, the church person elbow next to us, because you have a relationship with technology. And I really use that language specifically this morning because it is a relationship. Think of it this way. Your device knows what you've been searching and knows what you've been shopping for, that jacket, those pair of shoes that you've been searching for, shopping for, before your spouse or your partner knows about it, right? I don't know if you've ever been just searching for something or even talking about something that you want to buy, and all of a sudden there's ads all over your devices for it, right? Really, really creepy stuff. But you have an intimate relationship with your devices. They know more about you than most people know about you. And here's some of the stats that I discovered this last week about Americans and our relationship with our smart devices, our phones, our tablets, our computers. This is some crazy, frightening stuff. 80% of people look at their phones first thing in the morning and last thing at night. It's the first thing that we see. It's the last thing that we see. 75% of people sleep with their phones. That's a pretty intimate relationship, right? Like snuggling up with your smartphone. 40% of people check their phones in the middle of the night. I've been guilty of this. You actually wake up, have to go to the restroom or something, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, what am I doing on my phone? It's been 30 minutes. Like 40% of people check their phones in the middle of the night. This one's wild to me. 30% of people shower with your phones. What is wrong with you? I don't know if this is somebody like reaching their arm out of the shower, scrolling when they're in the shower, or you have some incredible enclosure that doesn't steam and water doesn't get into your device. Maybe you're doing that, but that's crazy. 30% of people do this. But here's a crazy last stat here. The average smartphone owner unlocks their phone 150 times in a day. We check out what's going on the internet, what's going on in our social media, what's going on in our messages 150 times a day. You and I, my friends, we have a relationship, dare I say, an intimate relationship with our devices. I heard this phrase over the last couple of months. I think it's so true that scrolling is the new smoking. Think about that. It used to be people would step out of a stressful meeting or they had a stressful day at work, and so they just go and, smoke a cigarette. It's so much healthier if you just do like a doom scroll and you're just scrolling for 45 minutes, right? But we do this to relieve a little bit of stress from ourselves, to escape the world around us because we want to get into more of a controlled environment, so we look down at our devices. Yourself just like stepping into the restroom to scroll, and you don't have to go to the restroom at all. Can we be real here? I've got 2 kids, like under the age of, right at 2, and we have a newborn. And this last week, being at home, I was like, I'm just going to go to the restroom for a while. And I'm like, what am I doing 5 minutes later, right? But it was just a way for me to escape, to relieve a little bit of a stress that I was feeling in my life. And parents, we do this all the time. So we need to have that DTR, a plan for our relationship for our devices. And like I said earlier, we want to help each and every one of us have a theology of our technology. Because as incredible as our technology is in the world that we live in, and all the incredible gifts that it is to us and the way it helps us connect, helps us live, helps us be more efficient with our work, we have to also admit that there's some negative aspects to our current relationship with our devices and with our technology. Some negative aspects that lead us to a life that's less than Jesus died and rose again for you and I to have. Here are the 4 categories, I believe, that our technology and our relationship with our technology can be affecting us negatively. Emotionally, do you guys know that 2007, the release of the first Apple iPhone, was the inflection point of an entire industry booming in America called anti-anxiety and depression medicine? 2007, the time that the Apple iPhone was first released, and this boom of anti-depression and anti-anxiety medication, it just exploded to now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Dare I say that our devices are not helping us live more fully and abundantly emotionally? Physically, it's affecting us physically in a lot of ways. I mean, we're heavier because of it. We're less active overall. Overall, people that have smartphones are sleeping less because the blue light that we're looking at in our phones, it's helping fire off synapses in our brain to be more active and awake than we want to be. Chiropractors are discussing this new thing that's happening not just in older people, but in people of all generations called text neck. Have you heard of this? Text neck. It's when you're just looking down at your device and you're actually damaging your spine, damaging your neck because you're doing it way too much. It's affecting us physically in ways that we were never supposed to be affected. Relationally, I mean, we can do a whole week on the way that our technology can actually harm us and damage us relationally. I mean, we can be sitting at the same table with somebody that we love, but we can be on 2 separate devices and we might as well be on 2 different continents, right? We can be with somebody but not really be present with someone at all. Relationally, the way that we deal with our conflict in our marriages and in our families, I think our devices can have a negative and an adverse effect on that as well. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but in our marriage, like there have been times that we've been like gearing up to have a disagreement, to have like a little battle royale. We need to talk about this because we're not seeing things the same way. We're not on the same page. And we're about to go there, but then all of a sudden one of us will just reach for our phone and we'll look down instead of looking at the other person to just diffuse the situation. But the problem is we never actually deal with the conflict. And many of us, we retreat to our devices so we don't have to deal with the conflict ever again, and that's a problem. Relationally as well, it's stopping us from living and interacting with people that see the world differently than us. We get on social media and we find ourselves in these echo chambers where these systems are sending us the news that we want, the way we want the news to look, and the news that we want to get, and we don't know how to interact with people who vote differently than we do, that live a different kind of life and see the world differently than we do, because we think that we have the corner on truth, and it's affecting the way that we relate to the world around us. I also think it's affecting us spiritually in a lot of ways, in a negative way as well, because you might come to church. The average Christian in America goes to church about 1.7 times a month, and you might actually like watch online or listen to a message later, but it's not a lot of time. It's about 2 hours a month the average churchgoer goes to church. And then you think about that stat of 150 times a day we're opening our phones and we're spending that much time on our devices. There's a lot more of the input we're taking in from media, from technology, from sports news, all kinds of news and connections we have online than we ever do from personally reading the scriptures, hanging out in a group like a table group or a small group, serving other people. I mean, the math is crazy high on one side of consuming technology and consuming media, and very small when it comes to how we're feeding ourselves spiritually. And so you can just see the way that might play out, that we're starved spiritually because we're looking for it all in the wrong place. Now, technology is incredible, and this is not a message about how we need to like old school get all of our technology and burn them. Like that's not what we're talking about here. Some of you guys about head for the door as soon as I said that. This is not a message about those young kids and their technology, because you and I, we all know some grandmas and grandpas who can't get off their tablet, right? We know some grandmas and grandpas that should have Facebook taken away from them. Like this is not a young person thing or old person thing. This is a people thing. So technology, it is not evil, it is not sacred and holy, but man, it is changing us. And here's the thing I want us to dive into this morning is that humanity's struggle with having a right, proper relationship with technology, it's always been. This was not like the internet was invented by Al Gore and then everything changed. Like, this is a little joke for somebody in the back. This has always been an issue. As long as there's been people, there have been people trying to make technological advances to take the toil and the harshness of work out of our lives. And we've had this struggle of putting technology in its right place. And this morning, I want to start us by going back to the very first book, the very first document that's recorded for us in the Hebrew Scriptures, or what you might refer to as the Old Testament, the book of Genesis. And in chapter 11 of the book of Genesis, we get this really interesting, weird story / parable, we don't know exactly what it is, called the Tower of Babel. And I want us to spend just a little bit of time here, and I want us to spend some time talking about technology in the book of Genesis so that you recognize that this is a people issue. As long as there's been human beings, this has been an issue. And I think God wants to teach us something through this so that we can walk wisely into the future with our devices. So we're going to spend some time, we're just going to read all of this account of the Tower of Babel from Genesis chapter 11. We'll kick off right here, verse 1. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. I hear Shinar is beautiful in the springtime. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar instead of mortar. Now, what do you see here when they say, let's come together and let's use brick instead of stone, let's use tar instead of mortar? What do you see here? This is a technological advancement. This is them saying that this is the way that we used to build structures, but let's do it differently so that we can build it bigger, badder, stronger, higher than ever before. We see a technological advancement just early on in the scriptures here. And they continue to explain why they wanted to make this technological advancement. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves." You see, ancient civilizations in the ancient Near East where this was found, they would be known for their tallest structure, just like in Chicago being known for the tallest structure, the Sears Tower, or Indianapolis with our incredible Salesforce building. You know what I mean? This is how communities would be known in the world, and so they would make a name for themselves. This is the way that they were validated on the world stage to let them know that they were a real superpower. They were a community, a group of people that were not to be trifled with. So that they said, this is why we'll build this thing so tall, so we make a name for ourselves. And then he says this, otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Here's the other reason. They don't want to be scattered and spread out. They want everybody to live there under the security and the safety of this massive city. Because if you're spread out, especially in the ancient world, there's less safety, less security, and there's more external forces that can bring you harm and hurt you. And so this was a safety move, like, hey, everybody will move here to our epic city instead of everybody spreading out. And what we see next is really kind of odd and jarring, but we see God's response to this technological advancement. And I think God's response to the reasoning behind the technological advancement, even more so than the tower itself. We're told this next. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord says, if as one people, speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it's called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Isn't that weird? Isn't that interesting? I think so many of us, because we are so thirsty for unity, we're in our divided times, we think, wouldn't God want there to be one language? Wouldn't he want them to all be living together? And I want to let you know that God's response here is not a response of anger towards the structure they're building, but the motivations underneath the surface. You see here, these people in this city, they were actually wanting this technological advancement to fill a hole that they were never supposed to have filled by technology, but to be filled only by a relationship with God. You see, what did these people want? They wanted to make a name for themselves. They wanted to be validated. They wanted to be famous. They wanted to have people look at them with terror and with awe. And God says, I don't want you to find validation. I don't want you to find your self-esteem and your reputation and what you do. No, I want you to find your reputation and be validated in who I say that you are, because you are mine. You see that they wanted to build this big tower so that people would not be scattered all over the place, so they would have security and safety under one city. But we're reminded back just a few chapters earlier in the book of Genesis that the call to the first humans was to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth with God's glory. Them being all under one roof was them not living into their purpose to fill the earth, to spread out and spread God's way everywhere they went. So the issue that God had with these technological engineers and these people that are building this massive tower is not actually the structure itself. It's that they were doing it for a reason, to fill a hole that they weren't supposed to have filled in any other way. And I think this is interesting to me, because I think underneath the surface, none of us would say this, but I think after we look at this, we might find ourselves in this. We go to our devices often because we want it to give something to us. We want it to bring something to our lives. Here's a list, I think, of things that we want our devices to bring to us. We want connection. We're kind of bored. We're kind of lonely, so we want to connect with people. Maybe people we went to high school with, college with, our family members that live out of town, and we want to connect with them. Other times we go to our devices, we go to the internet to find belonging, to find a community. It's kind of crazy. You can find online community that many people think is actually better than in-person community because it can be so individualized. You can have a community that's all based around like collecting cookie jars. And they're like, these are my people. They collect cookie jars. And if those are your people, that's weird, but it's okay. But like you can find belonging around following a sports team, following a certain group of movies or books, or writing fan fiction about those books. You can find belonging and community on our devices. That's what we think we're going to get. A lot of times we want to get information. We want to learn more from our devices. And it's incredible the information that we have access to. Just the other night I was thinking, because the Pacers have won 2 games in a row, which if you've been following the Pacers this year, it's been amazing. So I'm like, how many games are we out of the playoffs? And I'm like, oh, my phone's in another room. I can't know. And it kind of drove me crazy. But we can get information about anything and everything. We're watching a movie. That guy looks familiar. What do I know that guy from? IMDb app. Like we want to know those things. And the people that you're with are annoyed that you're on your phone looking at IMDb, but you just got to know. We have all the information at our fingertips. Sometimes we want security, and so we go to our devices. Parents, if you got kids that are driving, you want to know exactly where they are because you're tracking them. You better believe you're tracking them. And you want to know exactly where they are. And if you don't know where your kids are in that moment, you're losing this sense of security. Sex, intimacy. Many people go to the internet, go to their device to find this intimate connection because they think that's what's going to make them feel better. And there is billion-dollar industries that help people do just that. Then stress relief, just from a busy day at work, a stressful day at work, a stressful meeting, having to have that conversation again with your kids or having to gear up for that conversation with your spouse. You just need a stress relief. So you go to your phone, you put your head down to get a stress relief. And now here's what I want you to see about all these things that we go to our devices for. These are beautiful things. These are sacred things. There is no sin in this list at all. These are good gifts from a good heavenly Father that he wants your life to not just be marked by, but to be flooded with. He wants your life to be flooded with connection, belonging, information, security. He wants your life to be full of intimacy and stress relief. He wants your life to be full of those things. They're not evil things, they're good things, but I think we go to this device to get them when God is saying, hey, you're not going to find it there. You're looking for love, you're looking for security and intimacy and stress relief in all the wrong places. I mean, think of it this way, you guys, and we'll put this up on the screens, that our devices, they give us the whole world in the palm of our hands. Our devices give us the whole world. We have access to anything full tilt in the palm of our hands. When you get that new device, you get that new phone, you get the cool box with the charging cable, or you get the device with the instructions or the terms of agreement that none of us ever read and we throw away. You get the device, but when you get that device, these smart devices, you get so much more than just that. I mean, you get all of your contacts, your address book, all their phone numbers right there. You actually get a phone, which we forget that we can actually talk on these things sometimes, right? I mean, you get a camera that's better than any kind of digital camera that we used to have at all. You get games, you get every song that was ever recorded that you could search and index on your device. You get your banking information, access to all of your resources. You get news. A lot of times you get the news that you want to hear from the source that you like to hear. You get sports news and sports scores and teams schedules and things like that. You get fitness tracking if you're into that kind of thing. You have all the TV, all the media you could possibly ever stream directly to your phone in HD. You get all the books ever. You have the world's library right there. You get GPS, which is an incredible thing. Does anybody remember MapQuest? Like printing out directions on MapQuest. I mean, some of the biggest fights that I ever had with Megan when we were out of town, like, oh, turn left here. What's here mean? Is that there? You know, like this terrible thing. But you get a GPS right there in your device. You have the whole world built into the palm of your hand. But what I want you to see is you get the negative side of the whole world being built into the palm of your hand as well. You don't just get the news, you get the bad news built into the palm of your hand, and you get the bad news of the entire world. Think about this. We used to only know the bad news of our families or our locality or maybe just in America. We now have a bombardment of the worst things that are happening on the face of the planet to our devices, to our eyes all the time. We don't just get the bad news of the whole world. We get the highlight reel of the whole world. We get people only wanting to put their highlight moments up on their social media, sharing with us while we're still sitting in our PJs, like just poured spilled coffee on ourselves, haven't even showered, it's 2 p.m., and they're like Chip and Joanna in their backyard, and they're making this big feast for everybody, and there's shiplap all over their house. Shiplap. And we see the highlight reel of the entire world in the palm of our hand all the time. The temptations of the whole world in front of us the whole time. The opinions of the whole world in front of us all the time. Who we should vote for, why we could never vote for that person, how we should parent, if we should get vaccinated, if we shouldn't get vaccinated, if masks are good or bad. Can I go further? You know what I'm talking about. We get the opinions of the whole world and how we're wrong all the time. And we also have this ability to be accessed by the whole world 24/7 as well. You know, our devices, on average, they weigh about 6 ounces, but many of us would say, man, my relationship with this device, it's weighing me down. And if you go into the New Testament, into the teachings of Jesus, the life of Jesus, there's not a sermon, there's not a message, there's not a parable about technology and how we should walk wisely. So if we want to grow in wisdom with our devices, we have to glean from some of the teachings of Jesus and sort of take an angle of looking at wisdom here, looking at a principle that Jesus taught. And there's one teaching in the Gospels. It's recorded actually in 3 of the 4 Gospels, which are biographies of Jesus' life and his teaching and what he did. And there's this one passage I think that really is appropriate for us when we talk about having a healthy relationship with our technology. This is recorded in Matthew 4, chapter 16. Jesus says this: "What good is it if someone gains the whole world but loses their soul? Or what can anyone trade for their soul?" You see, we got the whole world in the palm of our hands, right? But Jesus asks this really sharp question. What good is it if someone gains the whole world, you get everything you could possibly want, endless demand on an endless scroll, but you lose your soul? And this is scary language, right? We're thinking well, if you have a device, does that mean that you can't be with Jesus forever or God can't save your soul? What is he really getting at here? No, that's not what he's talking about. Jesus is actually saying here that in your life, there are things that eternally matter. The word soul is the Hebrew word nephesh. And nephesh is a beautiful concept because it is the unified you. It is your body, it is your emotions, it is your desires, it is your thoughts, it is your spirit all wrapped up into one. It is the unified you. And Jesus says, in this life, this matters. Your soul matters. And then there are other things, the whole world, what's the point? So Jesus is saying that. He's not saying that technology is evil. He's not saying that we shouldn't desire for things, but he's saying we should put things in its right place He's saying that possibly our devices can be a magnet for us to what truly doesn't matter eternally. Eugene Peterson, who wrote the Message paraphrase of the whole Bible, I love it. He says this, he translates these rhetorical questions from Jesus this way. He says, what kind of deal is it to get everything you want but lose yourself? What could you ever trade your soul for? I love that. What kind of deal is it? What kind of deal? It's a bad deal is what Jesus is saying here. To get everything you really want, but you lose yourself. You lose who you really are. It's a bad deal, but my friends, you and I, we take it all the time. It's a bad deal to be connected with someone in a different state, in a different place, but be sitting next to someone across our dinner table and not really be connected to them at all. It's a bad deal for us to look at pictures of our friends' spring break extravaganza, but not be looking up at our kids playing in our own backyard. It's a bad deal. And we lose ourselves. We lose who we really are sometimes if we don't have a proper relationship with our technology. If not in check, you guys, our relationships, your relationships, I don't want to mince words here, but if not in check, your relationships with your devices, it will help you lose your soul, lose yourself. And many of you know what I'm talking about. You've lost hours scrolling on your device because you're bored, and ultimately you feel worse about yourself, and you can't sleep, and you just feel worse. You're less than what you want to be. Some of you know what I'm talking about losing yourself because you got access to everything you could possibly want, and it just makes you more anxious. And that anxiety is affecting every aspect of your life. There are profiles of people online that you keep checking, and every time you go to check them, you feel awful afterwards, but you're addicted and you keep going back and you're losing yourself. You're losing who God dreams for you to be. Many of you guys, you've lost real relationships, or you have relationships that are drifting away, relationships that matter deeply to you, but you are drifting from them because you're too text-necked down and you've lost yourself in it. And if that's you, if you feel like you've lost yourself in it just for a few moments, and I don't want this to be cheesy at all, it kind of is, but I think it's helpful for me to think about this. But if you're spending so much time looking down to understand who you really are, I want to encourage you to do this. Don't look down, look up. Don't look down at your device for security, for belonging, for intimacy, for the truth of who you really are. Look up. Instead of taking your cue from how many likes you have or the people and the experiences that they're having on our devices, what would happen if you took your cue from the one who died and rose again for you? Don't look down to get validity, security. Look up. Because, my friends, if you know it or not, there is a heavenly Father who created the world and everything in it. And he was so crazy about you being in right relationship with him and this world being in right relationship with him that he came for you. And he died a death in your place, and he rose again to give you life here and life forever to the fullest. If you feel like you've lost yourself because of your relationship with technology, I just want to encourage you to look up to him. Look at him and what he says about you before you look down. So what I want to do, just with the remaining time we have, I just want to quickly give us 2 practical steps that might help us have a define the relationship talk with our devices and with our technology. The first one is this. It's parent your devices. I got these, by the way, from this incredible thought leader and theologian by the name of Andy Crouch, who wrote a really helpful book about this. But parent your devices. What I mean by this is if you're a parent, you put your kids to bed before you go to bed, right? You hopefully wake up before your kids wake up and they're stirring around the house. I have a newborn, so I am like not in this category, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Because you get that squawking cry, and that's when you're up if you have a newborn, right? But parent your devices. That stat about our phones, our devices, our scrolls being the first thing that we see and the last thing that we see before we go to bed. The first thing we see in the morning, last thing we see at night. Man, that is something that I think is forming you. It's forming me in an unhealthy way that we need to be mindful of. So this might look like putting your phone in a different room at a certain period of time. Instead of using it as an alarm clock, actually spend $6 on a really cheap alarm clock and put it next to your bed. I think nothing will radically form you in the way of Jesus in this weird technological time that we live in, like letting the first things that you see in the morning not be the stock market, the news, what you missed before, but letting the first things you see, the first things that enter into your soul be what God says about you. And by praying or reading the scriptures or listening to a worship song that reminds you of his love and your identity in him, I don't think anything will shape you more than that. I actually had an experience with this for the first time in my life. I'm not coming at this technology topic saying that I have conquered it, I know what I'm doing in it all. I'm coming at it from somebody who's like, man, I have an unhealthy relationship with technology. And so for the first time in my life, starting Monday of this week, I've been putting my phone to bed in a different room. And I am embarrassed to tell you how many times I feel like I looked over or I reached for it or I wanted to know who the Pacers played next. And I'm like, I'm going to have to wait till the morning. I don't like this feeling at all. And I've been starting my days without turning my alarm off and checking notifications. I've been starting my days praying and reading the scriptures even before I even go to my phone. And it is starting to open something up in me. I'm clearer headed and clearer hearted as I lead into my day. And so I don't think anything will change your life practically more this next week than you deciding, I'm going to put my phone in the kitchen, I'm going to put my phone in the bathroom, I'm not going to let it be the first thing that I see and the last thing that I see. I'm telling you, I want to challenge you to do that, to parent your devices. Put it to bed before you go to bed. Here's the last one I want to leave you with. Set device-free zones and times. Seriously, you can get as granular as putting your phone in a basket, putting it in a different room, closing the door, turning the notification beeper off, whatever. But set device-free zones and times. And this is critically important if you have kids or teenagers. Meal times. Can you imagine if your meal time was not, fluttered with them looking down or having notifications beep, but if it was in a different part of the house during that time, and they just knew that this is time that we're going to connect. Our drive times with our kids in between their practices and their after-school activities, what if devices were not being used during that time, but it was specifically used for human connection with the people that matter the most to us? And I know there's some fear in this of being away from our devices. What if somebody needs to get a hold of us? And I just got to remind you that the human race went forward thousands of years without people being able to get a hold of us every moment of every day. Actually, almost every plot device of the Brady Bunch in the 70s was not being able to get a hold of one person. That show would not have existed if we had smartphones on us, right? You can do this. I'm telling you, you'll be grateful that you did. So parent your devices, set device-free zones and times, and live by it. And find that in these rules, there's freedom on the other side. It will be better for you. And I'm on this journey with you, and I think that this is the way that Jesus wants us to be formed. So have you had that define the relationship talk with your technology? Are you freaking out at the concept of having your phone in a different room while you go to sleep? Are you freaking out at the concept of not checking email before 10 a.m.? Maybe you are. Maybe that's a good sign that things are not healthy in that way. But Jesus, he invites us to not lose ourselves, not lose our soul, and trade it for the world that doesn't really matter, the world that might be in the palm of our hands. He invites us to the life that's truly life, my friends. And that's getting our screen time under control to make sure that the devices that we own do not own us. That's what Jesus wants for you. That's what we want for you. Let me pray for us. Jesus.